You call the roll, please.
Yes. Mr. Anderson?
Here.
Mr. Batty? Mr. Jessic? Mr. Gary Johnson?
Here.
Mr. LaSalle?
Here.
Mr. McEnroth?
Here.
Mr. Steve Johnson?
Here.
Mr. Mahoney?
Here.
Oh. Sorry. We got two Johnsons.
Our first item is approval of the minutes of January 20th, 2015. Does anybody have any corrections, additions?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question and a comment on page 3 of 6, just a little over halfway down. It refers to the PMUF plan. Could you tell me what PMUF stands for?
Pavement Maintenance Utility Fee.
Okay. And the other thing I wanted to mention is that there was a question from one of the members about parking for special events. And I think John mentioned that he would look into that, but I didn't see it mentioned in the minutes, and I think it should be. That was a good comment.
I'll review the minutes and
Okay. Anything else? Call for a motion.
I'll move we approve the minutes with that addition.
Second. All in approval, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passed and approved. Well, welcome, everybody. Our last two Transportation Advisory Committees have certainly been well attended. I don't know if that's because I'm the new chair or just exactly what, but you're giving me a bit of a challenge here, which I welcome. So it's turning into quite a lot of fun. Our first item, agenda analysis. Do any members want to make any changes to the agenda? Okay, then we'll proceed with citizen comments. I will be enforcing the 3-minute rule for speaking time for anybody. If you're representing a neighborhood association or some special official group, then you'll be allowed 5 minutes. So the first, I'll call you up two at a time. Jerry Whitmore and Tom O'Brien. Oh, Sherry. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. And like I said in the last meeting, I'm from the old school, so we'll go with ladies first.
And this is my very first meeting here, so...
Oh, good.
Boy, are you in for it.
I'm Sherry Whitmore, and I live on Westling Drive. However, my backyard faces Central Point Road. And I've been here only a little under 4 years, but I was very aware right away that there's a lot of traffic going down Central Point Road. I've also been aware that there's a lot of traffic coming into it. Most of all, I've been very aware of the noise where I live. I'm 3 houses south of Partlow. And I'm aware that from east and west, the signs say 25 miles an hour. Coming from the north is 35 miles an hour, but right on Partlow, there's a sign this big that says 45 miles an hour, and I can hear the cars come around those directions, step on the gas, and go by. And it just seemed illogical to me that that sign says 45 miles an hour when everything else is less speed. And I would just love it if it were reduced.
Okay, thank you.
Can you assist me with screen and video and all that?
I had made arrangements in advance, unfortunately very late this afternoon. Lisa's been kind enough to help. My name's Tom O'Brien, resident of Oregon City. I don't think I'll run over, but in case I do, I'm a neighborhood association chair. I wanted to call your attention first off to a mission statement that was developed by the new City Commission at their retreat in January. In that mission statement, they state, quote, "Build a healthy community that leads the state in safety, economic opportunity, livability, and historic significance." So what I wanted to share with you tonight is basically a video show of a number of street signs couple of our nearby cities seem to do a more focused concentration on speed limits within their confines of their cities. The two that I'm thinking of in particular are Gladstone and Canby. Gladstone is somewhat less than a half of the size of our city, 11,500. Canby is about half the size at 15,829. The thing that I noticed that's different about those two cities is that Gladstone relies heavily on enforcement. They have built up a reputation over the years. You do not exceed the speed limit in that town. Canby, on the other hand, takes, I think, a better approach, and one I would like to see Oregon City take, and that is they are educating the public while at the same time some enforcement. You'll see from the signs here, this particular sign shows that they're trying to catch the attention of the motorist to let them know that it's 25 miles an hour. The second sign, again, another way of getting the attention of that motorist to let them know, hey, it's 25 here. Third sign. Another one, different speed, but notice the placard underneath, the small sign. They're telling the public, look, we expect you to do this. They're not heavy-handed about it. They aren't slapping fines left and right, but they're letting them know, we want you to obey the speed limits. Next, please. Same here. Next. Notice on this particular one, they've done a good job of taking and recycling older sign blanks and covering them up with a new message. I think that's a very wise use of a city's funds. Next, please. Here they have a pair of signs side by side. We do something similar, particularly with our trailer, where we post the sign, the speed limit, and then we flash the sign underneath. Next, please. We do this, however, it seems to me, just a casual observer, that a city half our size has at least as many, if not more, of these out there than we do. That tells me something. Next, please. The one that I really like, which is a newer sign, they've started placing them. I've seen at least 2 of them in Canby, where the arrows show a very bright LED light. When that sign detects a motorist heading toward it, those come on and you cannot help but see that sign. I mean, I don't care what else is attracting your attention, whether you're on a cell phone or whatever, you will not miss that sign. Next, please. I will hope that after tonight, the Transportation Advisory Committee will give a thumbs up toward proceeding with some kind of a program to improve our enforcement and education of our citizens. As I viewed the picture show, I was reminded that in August of 2013, our City Commission approved a $195,000 amount for the elevator, to put a picture show on the elevator column for a period of 1 year, which would be visible mostly to folks in West Lynn, but for a period of no more than 4 to 5 hours a day. Think of what we could do in this city if we dedicated $195,000 to traffic enforcement that would be ongoing insofar as the signage well beyond 1 year time limit. Hopefully our City Commission will be just as generous with this effort. We need to do a survey also about what the current sign inventory is. Attention needs to be paid as to where the signs are located. In our effort to become a recognized tree city, we now have trees in front of many signs, making the signs difficult, if not impossible, to see. I noticed in Canby that the signs are frequently placed mid-block, which is helpful as motorists are able to more clearly see them at a time when they have fewer distractions than at a typical intersection. at an intersection. You have directional signage. You have A-frame signs. You have many, many more things conflicting with our traffic signs at a typical intersection. So I request once again that you give a thumbs up in making our streets safer for all of our for all of our citizens, and the neighborhoods more livable. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Emma Edwards and Chris Hofgren. Go ahead.
I am at 1115 Fifth Street. And the corner, the side street is Jackson. And I've lived there for 9.5 years. And over that period of time, the traffic has gotten thicker. And dangerous, it's dangerous. It's...
Could you bring the microphone a little
Yes,
closer?
sorry about
You'll
that.
pull toward you. Thank you.
Thank you. There you go. The neighbor on the corner, their fence has been taken out since I've lived there. My car has been hit and totaled out, sitting out front of my house. My neighbor next to me on the other side, her car's been hit before too. And I'm stressed all the time about the traffic. It stresses me really bad. Because they're constantly speeding. There's 75% of the traffic is speeding at all times of the day. I used to be a construction flagger, and I can tell when they're speeding and when they're not. And the 35 miles per hour with the 25 miles per hour is, I think, a little too confusing for people. And I think the whole thing should just be 25 miles an hour.
What was the location again? I didn't catch it.
1115 Fifth Street.
Thank you.
Do you have children?
Yes.
Yeah. And sidewalks there?
Yes. And my daughter goes to high school here, and her bus stop is on the corner of 5th and Jackson. And I worry, and I watch her. I'm worried she's going to... I tell her, if you watch the traffic. If somebody's a little squirrely, jump and run. Because I used to be a construction flagger, so... And it makes me nervous a lot. And I get freaked out if my dogs even go out front, in the front yard. And so I'm really highly stressed from it.
You're talking about the Fifth Street right out here?
Yes,
And
right up
up, how many? Jackson? Okay.
Okay, Chris?
right at the top of 5th Street, right before it turns to Lynn Avenue.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
It's right on the corner. There's a curve on a hill, and when they're coming down, they don't slow down. It's got that flashy thing that shows your speed.
It's one of our 13 speed radar locations that we have in the city.
And a lot of times I'll look at that, and they're doing at least 35 coming through there, 30, 35, and they're not slowing down to 25, even when they see that flash.
Okay,
That's all
thank
I've
you.
got.
Chris?
Yeah, thank you, Commissioners. I'm speaking more as a commuter. I reside in Multnomah County, southeast Portland, but I have worked here in Oregon City for 9 years at the Myers Building on 607 Main. So park and take the bridge out across 43 there. I'm concerned about the intersection at 7th and Main there, where people turn right to go westbound onto the bridge, and there's a sign there that says 43 and 205, and obviously a lot of people are coming into Oregon City just for the day. They're at the courthouse or something. A lot of people aren't very familiar with the area, and they're just, oh, this is how I get back onto the freeway and get out of town. But that intersection, one of the things is right up just between the bridge and the elevator right at the moment, because of the renovations that are going on. There's a big dumpster kind of sitting on the north side of 7th. But when people are making that right turn onto the bridge, even when the people going onto the bridge have the green light to head westbound, people are still kind of creeping up to that corner, and they can't really see, and that dumpster's kind of impeding their view right at the moment as well. But it makes people kind of encouraged, or in their mind they think, oh, I can go around this corner real fast, even though the other traffic has the right of way. And it's caused, I've seen this happen many times, people who have the green light are stopping, or 2 or 3 cars even sometimes stopping to allow these people who can't quite make this right turn onto the bridge. And it's, as you know, it's a very sharp turn. I mean, it's what we could do with renovating the bridge and everything, but it does take about 10 seconds to round that corner, especially if you're not real familiar, you have a bigger vehicle. So numerous times, I see people coming out around that corner and kind of blocking when we've all got the green light and we're kind of waiting for this person who really doesn't have the right of way. So I mean, my simple solution would be maybe there'd be a sign up there that would say, please yield the oncoming traffic when making the right turn, or some sort of brief sign that would indicate that to people, so that I mean, obviously there's a right turn lane that's been created there right in front of the pizza restaurant, but just some indicator to people that hey, if you're going to make a right turn, you absolutely need to ensure that there's no oncoming traffic, and the visibility, like I say, at the moment is not ideal, but do what you can there. But anyway.
That's a well-known bad intersection. Yeah. Thank you. Luis Gagnon and Paul Edgar.
I guess it's my turn.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you all for being here and listening to everyone. I've spoken before this committee several times, and the traffic continues to be a concern. I feel we live in a historic, I live in this neighborhood, a historic area, and it doesn't feel that way because of the traffic patterns. I so respect and appreciate our police department, but I believe that we need more enforcement. But I think it's also a bigger problem than that. I think we need more signs, different kinds of signs, traffic calming devices. I have a whole list and all kinds of information if anyone is interested. I just feel it's really important. It's noisy. Traffic is noisy. It's against the law. It turns our residential streets into dangerous roads. It changes our neighborhood negatively. It's a definite negative. And I noticed that parking codes are enforced, so I'm wondering why we wouldn't also enforce speed on the streets. Parking isn't quite as dangerous. So, and I thought I heard somewhere that someone in the city said that speed was the #1 complaint in this town. So I'm hoping that we can work together and make some positive changes. Thank you.
Do you have, you said you had a list of recommendations or ideas?
I do.
Could you pass that on
I
Lisa?
will have to dig through my paperwork. But
Okay, if you can get it to Lisa, then she could get it to the rest of our committee.
Thank you,
Paul?
Transportation Committee. I'm Paul Edgar out of Kenema area. First, I want to thank you for the opportunity when I came before you last year to invite you guys to come to Kenema and kind of walk and look and think about the uniqueness of our narrow streets and undulating areas where people can't see. That is really a public safety hazard. And you guys reacted, and we made some improvements, not all the improvements that we would like to see happen. And what I would like to see happen is the type of focus that you gave Kenema needs to be done with each of the neighborhood associations in the city, where you go to the neighborhood association and you have a walkthrough and where the people right there in those areas can give you the focus of what they consider as a problem in their immediate neighborhood, because this truly is a livability situation. And if you guys did this, you might get some really amazing insight, because what you're going to do is get their hearts poured out at you. They care. They're living it. They're right there seeing it every day. And so my suggestion with you all is to set up a situation, maybe go directly through the CIC and get down to where you go into each one of the neighborhoods and say, okay, what do you guys consider as your problems? Where do you see the possibility of life being lost or somebody injured? What could we be doing in each of the neighborhoods to make them safer, more livable? Now, when you do this, at the end, please don't forget Kenema. I walk the streets every day, virtually every day, with my dogs, and there are no sidewalks, and they're 20 feet wide. And so when you're walking in those surfaces, and if a car can't see you, it's trouble. And so, yeah, we made improvements. There's a lot of room to go. We can make a lot of improvements. But go out and get each one of the neighborhoods to give you a show and tell. Thank you.
Let's see, I have one here that doesn't have a name on it. The address, I think, is 10768 Parish Road.
Doug Neely. Didn't you used to read those?
Go figure. And you're will be followed by Andy Holthouse. I'm going to take advantage of that one.
Start. I'm here to speak about speeds as well. The area between Parish Road and Central Point and Partlow on Central Point Road is a 45-mile-an-hour speed limit. I know of no major arterial. There's some freeways that do, but I don't know of any major arterial that has that speed limit, and that's all within the city limit. Much of that area does not have sidewalks on it, so my experience on that road is that most people that live in those subdivisions are going around 35 during that 45-mile speed limit. But the people coming from the rural areas off of Central Point Road are coming up that hill, they hit that brake, and they're going much faster. I think that speed limit should be 35 throughout. I heard the person speaking about Lynn Avenue where it turns into 7th at that point and the drop. Molalla, I believe, has 35-mile speed limit until it hits the point you hit the slope, at which it goes down to 30, and then when you get down below to 7th Street, it becomes 25. That's not the case on Lynn Avenue going into 5th. It's 35 miles. You have these cautionary signs on the curve saying 25, but those are not enforceable. Those are just cautionary. The actual speed limit there, I think, on the slope should be 30. People are gearing down on a slope that has a 35-mile speed limit, and they're hitting the subdivision that's 25, and when you gear down even to a lower gear, I think you should have a lower speed limit coming down that slope.
Okay, thank you. Andy.
My name is Andy Holthouse. I live in the Hazel Grove subdivision, and I have two concerns. One is the stretch of Central Point Drive, just south of Partlow, where it's the 45-mile-an-hour speed limit. I would really like to see that get dropped to 35, and primarily because I have had many close calls turning left from Partlow Drive onto Central Point Drive, going northbound, making a left turn off Partlow onto Central Point Drive, where cars are coming in at, I'm sure, way more than 45, probably 50 to 60 miles an hour. And somehow they just don't see that first 35 mile an hour sign, which is north of Partlow. And they're just bombing along at freeway speeds practically. And when I make a left turn, I can't get up to speed fast enough, and you really have to watch for them. And there are some kind of sight obstructions there. It's kind of hard to see unless you pull way up to Central Point Drive. And I drive an old car with a long front end, so I have to be careful how far I pull forward. So that's about it for Central Point Drive. I really would like to see that drop down to 35. And then my other concern is South End Road, the hill, where it twists and winds down the hill from Barker Avenue down the hill to 2nd Avenue. That is a posted 30 mile an hour speed limit, and very few cars go 30 miles an hour, especially down the hill, even up the hill, but especially down the hill. And again, I drive a very old, 50-year-old car with drum brakes, and they're good brakes, but they're drum brakes. It's a very heavy car. I have to ride my brake down that hill, and I get a lot of people riding my bumper every time I go down that hill. I feel like I'm pulling a train of cars because they're all lined up behind me, and they're wiggling around like they want to pass, but they know they can't because it's a double yellow line and got oncoming traffic. And I'm going 29, 30 miles an hour, maximum speed limit. But I guess, they see my brake lights coming on quite a bit because I'm riding the brake. I have to. I can't let that car go any faster, or I'd end up in the trees or in the ditch. So those are my two main concerns, are those speed areas, and maybe more enforcement would help in that regard. I've gone and spoken with the police about South End Road, and every once in a while they have a motorcycle or two sitting out there, and they catch a lot of people, but I would like to see more enforcement. I don't see very many police cars in that area. I have a suggestion as far as the signs. It's kind of frivolous, but maybe if you printed up signs that say "This means you" below the speed limit sign, maybe that would catch people's attention. I don't know.
Okay. Thank you, Andy. Next we have Amy Wilhite and Norman Edwards.
Good evening. I'm Amy Wilhite. I'm here tonight on behalf of the Gaffney Lane Neighborhood Association, and I'd like to thank you for the work that got done about a year ago. We had a concern about an intersection at Garden Meadows and Malala Avenue, and I'm here tonight as a follow-up of that. It was great. We got some new signage, some lighting, and the strips painted, but we have a parking problem on Garden Meadow Drive, so this is basically behind Biscuits Cafe. As you pull onto that street, it's a very narrow street. I think it's right at the minimums, and it's hard when you're coming down the hill or up the hill to maneuver when you have parking on both sides of the street. So I'm asking if you'd like us to come back. I can put on a better presentation. We had some pictures that unfortunately my secretary couldn't get to me, but even the police liaison that comes to our neighborhood association, as well as one of our citizens in our neighborhood who is a police officer, have talked about the fact that they have a hard time maneuvering up that street because of parking on both sides. So we are asking at having it looked at that maybe parking could just be on one side of that street. And then as you approach Malala Avenue, and I had talked to Martin about this, of perhaps painting yellow, no parking, right at the corners so that you have a clear vision. Because pulling out, it's right across from Wilco, and it's hard to see with the median there has the trees, and it's kind of the way that the angle is. It's hard to see coming out of Garden Meadow, and also when you're quickly darting on, if there's a car waiting to come out, it just makes it really tough. So we thought maybe painting right there would, so that you couldn't park right at the corner, and then perhaps we could have it looked at to have a one-way or one side of the street designated parking there.
Do you have a recommendation as to which side would be best?
There's a preschool there right behind Biscuits, so I'm thinking that the other side of the street would be better, because I have gone down Garden Meadows and the preschoolers are coming out onto that sidewalk, and they have adults standing blocking because of the cars. They don't want the kids to walk out in between. So I'm thinking it would be nice to have parking on the other side of the street from
On
the
the
businesses.
O'Reilly Auto Parts side?
Well, it's on Garden Meadows. So
Right.
I don't know where the Riley, the bank.
Yeah.
Yeah, that side. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Amy's brought this to us before. Her and I have had some discussions about it. We've been waiting for Amy to come.
Yeah,
and
we had
speak
some
to
other
you
fires. So
guys.
sorry. Since October, I've been trying to get you.
Yeah, and we have some alternatives that we can present for you. We've already done the legwork on that. I was
Okay.
just really waiting for you to
Sorry.
bring it
Mhm.
here. So if you want to come back next month, we can present some alternatives if I don't have them put in by then, at least to give you an idea of what's coming.
Gladly, because we have some residents that want to come and talk about the intersection at, oh dear, what's the road? Caulfield and 213. So they were going to come to next month's meeting, so that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy.
Hi, my name is Norman. I noticed that through the years, 213 was kind of a main thoroughfare out to Malala, and as new construction has gone up in these upper hills up behind us, more and more people are going up Malala Avenue and up 5th and not using that freeway because of traffic. Well, I'm thinking, I'm not an engineer, but I'm thinking that if that 213 was widened even more and further out, gone further out, and had more accessible turnoffs into the city and up above to where they need to get off, and try and eliminate that traffic in our city, in our historical district, it would cut down traffic a lot. That's my belief. Now, because of the construction on Malala Avenue, 7th, everybody has moved over to 5th Street and found it very accessible and easy to go up through there. Where, and everybody that was using 213 has found that it gets backed up, and they're wanting to go through the city, and they take Malala Avenue up through the city. Well, this being a historical district, I don't think we really want all this traffic going through here that isn't really necessary. I'm hoping that we could find another solution and widen that 213 and make that a main thoroughfare to get out of here, and plus to filter people off to where they need to go up above instead of running through our town here. And that would quiet things down quite a bit. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else have any citizen comments? Oh, yeah, you put it in the wrong part, but come on up. Yeah, you put it on a different section, but come on up, and that's fine.
Thank you. It's fun to go last because there's been so many good comments, so I don't have to say things. But there's people in our community who are just doing amazing research and work. Mr. Simon is one, Mr. O'Brien. I think that I really appreciate them doing their work, and I hope that we give them a lot of encouragement to keep up the good work, because oh, the joys of urban growth. And I love this town. I've lived in and around this town since 1978. I know I look pretty good for that old, but, I really, really notice the increase in stress and pressure and the decrease in livability in this town because of as a consequence of urban growth. And I don't think that's all of it, but that's a lot of it. And so I want to support everything that's been said here. I noticed the other day that our street signs are really covered with algae and are dirty. And I think that they need to be washed. So I'm hoping, I don't know how that happens. I think that Jonathan Waverly told me that there's a lot of volunteers coming in July who want to do things. I don't know, Scott, if we can put them to work washing street signs, but how that happens. But I think our signs will look a lot better and be more visible if we got some of the algae off of them. I do live at 123 High Street. Today, just out of curiosity, I stood on Center about 2 blocks south of the stop sign, and I really feel for people like Luis Saganu because people are using Center Street as a fast way to get through this town. And they stop at there and they go vroom because there's no stop sign. And it really is, I'm sure, I mean, I live on High Street, so there's some of that too, but it's got to be maddening for the people who are on 5th and Center to deal with people rushing to try and get through. There are more children in the McLaughlin district. Young couples and young families are moving in. And I think that it's a really good time to deal with traffic calming and really have a really comprehensive plan to let people know that we are a traffic calmed area, that we really want to keep peace and calm in our neighborhood. And I think there's good ways to do that. There's been good suggestions this evening already. And it's worth the leadership. I mean, it does take leadership to say this is a value and this is what we're doing, and we are going to enforce it. But it's not just enforcement. I don't think we can rely just on our police.
I'll have to ask you to summarize.
Yes, okay. So I think that's it. Everything else has been said so well.
Thank you.
Mr. Simon, he's done a lot of work.
And sir, did you fill out one of these comment forms?
I didn't fill out the form.
Would you please do so after you've spoken?
Yes.
Thank you.
Actually, I have done a lot of work on this.
Would you tell us your name?
Oh, my name is Michael
where you
Simon. I
live?
live on 5th and Monroe.
Okay.
I've been there for, gosh, when I was young when I went there initially.
Okay.
So I initially got interested in the traffic when the Lynn Avenue and those streets had the speeds increased and endeavored to find out why that occurred. And so I collected a lot of documentation on how it occurred. And I'm not sure everyone is really clear on the process. I notice on the Transportation Advisory Committee, it says the state of Oregon is responsible for establishing speed zones. And that's true, but they don't just come in and do it. They first need a request from the city, and then they have to have the speed requested listed. So on Lynn Avenue, the speed was 25, and I have the speed zone request signed by Jason Frazier, an Oregon City traffic engineering technician, and the request is for a 35 mile per hour speed. One part on this form, it has recommendations from local residents, and it says we have received various recommendations. Some want it posted higher, some want it lower. I'm assuming the reference for this came from a background on kind of the timeline on getting this, requesting ODOT to do this speed study. And it was Public Works Supervisor Peter Irving, retired, got 2 anonymous phone calls. One to increase speed on Lynn Avenue from 25 to 30. One to decrease it on Leland Road from 35 to 25. So I'm assuming that's the public input, because other than that, there was none. And I think people should be aware that it's not ODOT that is coming into a town and mandating the speed. They have to be requested to come in and do it. They conduct a speed study, and they go by the 85th percentile. And there is logic behind the 85th percentile. But it's really, it doesn't account for residential streets. And so Lynn Avenue is classified under the Oregon City Master Transportation Plan as a minor arterial. And some of the things that are required of a minor arterial is they have sidewalks and bicycle facilities are required, and the speeds are less than on major arterials. And Lynn Avenue, being classified as a minor arterial, has a 35-mile-an-hour speed limit, which is higher than Moala Avenue that it parallels. So I begin to have kind of questions about, I used to forage for edible mushrooms, and had I deviated to that extent in my identification, I would have poisoned myself. So it seems like if we're going to have definitions, they should be met. And then I think the public should be encouraged, it should be the public and you folks here and everyone getting together and working together, not certain elements trying to bypass public opinion, which is what happened on this. And so one phone call triggered speed zone studies on Myers Road, Leland Road, and Lynn Avenue. And Myers Road at the westerly end doesn't even have a shoulder. Lynn Avenue has the shoulder as the bike path and the sidewalk in the shoulder. And so in Oregon City, the only place you can walk to the top of the hill with a sidewalk is Moala Avenue. So I just think that I think people need to be recognized and not just a traffic flow issue. It's all those things combined. And so I appreciate your listening to my rambling. And I do have an organized study that I've done with documentation, and I would like to present that at some point when I have it better put together. It's pretty well documented, so it's not hearsay.
Sure, just contact John Lewis or Lisa with your desires, and then we can look at that.
All right, thank you. I appreciate your time.
You bet. Thank you.
Thank you.
We received an awful lot of testimony about traffic issues here this evening, and for preparation for this meeting, I asked the Chief of Police to attend, and I think he may have thought this was normally a 7 o'clock start meeting, which most other committees are.
He's right.
Hold it. Okay, sorry about that.
You talked to him when he came in the door earlier, Bob.
And so that he could address the issues of what are possible for the police department to address speeding issues. And then I also asked Martin Montalvo to put together some of the things that the Public Works Department has available for speeding issues. So, Chief, would you like to address?
You figure out who your friends are when they've got your back. And you are my friend, Mr. LaSalle. Good evening, and thanks for the opportunity to, one, a lot of good stuff for me to listen to, but also to talk about kind of our end of enforcement. Kind of from a big picture viewpoint, traffic is one of the biggest challenges for us, and I don't think speed is our number one complaint, but it is up there, and right under it is I just got a ticket. So that's kind of the issue, and I've got several things that I'm going to talk about here, and I think that one of the things that when we look at enforcing traffic, I heard something that had come. I heard it from a couple different places, and somebody from the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association said it to me the other night after the commission meeting, and what she said is, she said, well, everybody knows that you guys are soft on traffic because you want people to like you. And I have a pretty doggone good idea of where this statement came from, and it came from over a year ago, a year or two ago. I was at that neighborhood association, and we were talking about traffic. And there are people inside of that neighborhood association who want our model for traffic enforcement to be Milwaukee. And I think two people maybe from that neighborhood association had made that statement. And for everybody who's told me they want us to be Milwaukee, I've probably had 100 who have told me we do not want you guys to be Milwaukee. And I think what they're specifically referring to is the vans and what I think some people believe the speed enforcement photo vans. There's kind of a sneaky thing that a lot of people do not like about those. In our business, especially in these times, being liked is okay. And what I liken, if there is some truth to what they're saying, it's that I think when people are agreeing with what we're doing in any room that I go to, our job is to reflect the community. And if I had 100 people telling me, look, you guys need to be Milwaukee, then I would regrettably start looking at whether or not something like photo vans were a good idea for us. A couple things that I want to just talk about. One, a lot of people don't know the difference between a traffic officer and a regular patrol officer. Being a police officer, usually when I run into people who out in the wherever who find out what I do for a living, they start talking about the last time they were pulled over or sometime that they got a ticket, and people have this this kind of conception of what we do is just write traffic tickets, and that is such a small portion of what a police officer does. And I think that most people are surprised to know that most of the cars that they drive by, most police cars, do not have moving radars in them. Everybody slams on their brake. The reality is, in just about any community, most of those cars do not have moving radars. The challenge is, I'll just talk about a couple things that have been happening lately. I wish I could tell you more about a drug bust that happened very recently in our area that was huge. Heroin is a gigantic problem for us right now. We've had 2 different heroin-related deaths inside of the last. We had one in January and one in December. You know from watching the news, there's a lot of violent crime that's been happening in this town. And there's just a lot going on. And so day shift has been slammed lately. And so you've got officers who are responding to 911 calls. And once they respond to the calls and take a theft or whatever they do, they need to go back and write a police report so they don't end up getting behind and making sure that the next call, that they're ready for it and these things stack up. And in the meantime, what we try and do is get them to write traffic tickets and enforce traffic as well on top of what they're already doing. So these are the challenges, and I don't want to sound like I'm whining. You know, this is our job is to respond to the community, and I think it's very important that there's sometimes where people in the community feel safe and they're not, and our job is to communicate to them when that's the case, and there's times where they feel safe and maybe they shouldn't. So my point is, our job's just not to make sure people are safe, but to also make sure that they feel safe. That's a livability thing that's a really big deal, and a lot of the things I'm hearing, people do not feel safe in their neighborhoods. And some of those have to do with just how the city's laid out, and then a lot of people use these streets as arterials. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the things that we do and have done. And if you remember, I am not sure how many faces are different, but I know several of you were here the last time I was here, and I basically figured out I'm kind of new to the management thing, and during a grant process I found out that kind of what some of our crash statistics, how high they were. And ever since then I've been doing a lot to try and address them. And a lot of them have to do with intersections. My point in saying that is Rome was not built in a day, and as long as this has been my responsibility, I've been moving in a direction to start addressing some of this as best as we can. I'm going to tell you about some of that. One of the simple things we've been doing is, like I told you earlier, that we do not have, most of our cars don't have moving radars in them. We've been buying them for the last couple of years, and just a couple of weeks ago in our budget, we're talking about putting more, so we're slowly putting more and more moving radar in our vehicles. So even as our people are heading to and from calls, if they catch somebody, they stop them and write a citation accordingly. Quota. People hate the quota word in policing, and I make no bones about the fact that we're the only police department I know that requires of their officers to write traffic citations. We require them, each officer, to write at least 10 a month, and people always shake their fist about certain cities, and I know you cops have quotas, and nobody has quotas because they're afraid of that statement. And in my mind, if the public has an expectation that the police officer whose salary they're paying for is that they're going to be writing traffic citations, then we're going to make every one of them write traffic citations. Frankly, some of them do not like it. Some of them would rather work drugs, which we've got a lot of people who are actively doing that as patrol officers as best they can, because that too is a major problem that is a life-threatening problem. We have added a traffic officer, I think, which everybody knows. The commission recently increased our budget amount, and one of those positions was a traffic officer. We also purchased a motorcycle because motorcycles can get into certain places and work a little bit better and a little more concealed than a car can. That officer was going through the training program for the motorcycle about a month ago, and is going to have surgery here in a couple weeks, and should be back to work in maybe 6 months because he crashed in the training, and the motorcycle. It's just so our traffic officer is okay, but he's not writing traffic tickets right now. And if coincidentally, if you want a deal on a slightly used BMW police motorcycle,
I will take you up on that.
You can see me afterwards.
I'll sell you my Harley.
It's funny, but it's too bad he got injured.
Yeah, it is. It's just it's life. Life's what happens when you're making plans. Radar trailers, we've had 2 for a long time, and if you look on our website, and I think every neighborhood that has spoken here today has taken us up on this, we do run those out into the neighborhoods and put them in places to kind of help calm some traffic, and I think they work. We've done it for years and years, and it's a good plan, and we'll continue to do it. Law enforcement is like anything else. The squeaky wheel gets the grease, and as much as possible, when people say, hey, I got a problem in this area, can you do something about it? We send people, say, hey, try and hit this area. I had, recently, it was probably a few weeks ago, I had gotten something at the Chief's Advisory from the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association, and I even had a sergeant out working in their neighborhood, trying to do what we can with the resources we have. Some of the things we're looking at in the future, and I'll say this, and I said this before, I'm not looking just at things I like. I hate radar vans, and I would have to really be pushed because I just think that they're so divisive. But some of the major issues we have, the most dangerous intersections in town, are 213 in Beaver Creek, 213 and Clackamas River Drive or Washington there. From our last stats was number 2, but since the jug handle project, I envision that going away. But so number 3 is 99 and 14th. And we have been in communication with a red light, one of the photo red light company, and we've got doing a bunch of preliminary studies with them. I think sometime this year I'll probably be coming and making a presentation to you guys and getting your take on that. Just because we're looking out of the box, some of those intersections are difficult to work. There's a really good traffic calming effect, and I don't like them, but it's not really. I have a say, and I think but I think it's something the public kind of has to look at. And the other thing, traffic team, we need more bodies, and I'm looking. I have been looking. These last few weeks, I've had my assistant looking into some stuff with court about whether or not traffic positions pay for themselves, because there's if they're out generating tickets, they're generating revenue, which goes into the general fund, and looking at the possibility of could we hire a couple more traffic officers, basically because they pay for themselves. So this is stuff that we have been working on. It certainly is not fast enough. We know that there are a lot of things that need to be done to both deal with these speed issues, but also to reduce our traffic crash stats. Parking versus speed, that was a really good question. One of the main reasons, we have people specifically dedicated to parking, and their salaries are paid out of the money that people put in the meters, and that is their only job, is to enforce parking, and they don't get hurt in motorcycle training, so they're still out there. I really think that's about all I have to say. If you have any questions, I'm going to hang out, or if you have any questions now, I'd be happy to answer them. And
any committee members have any questions? Chief Band?
I've got one. Chief, if you had your druthers, by how many more personnel would you like on your force to handle this?
I think 3 would put us in a really good place. 3 total, so 2 more than the person that we have now. One thing I want to bring up, that would be in a good place, because to stagger their shifts a little bit, to be able to hit school zones in the mornings, and then to also be able to hit people going home at 5 o'clock. I think that's a big thing. And this community is definitely just driving to work. There is more traffic going up and down 7th every morning, going up and down every one of these other arterials. One thing I forgot to mention in terms of what we're doing, our traffic officer who got hurt is a pretty creative guy, and he came to us and said, hey, because I think education's a huge piece in what we do. The judge would sentence certain people who had a clean driving record of young people to a traffic education class, and the class was up off Sylvan somewhere up in Portland. And he said, why don't we do one here? He said, I've been to the class, I see what they put out, I think we could tailor it to the community a little bit, and then they don't have to drive up there. And we have got a huge, we're sending twice as many people to that as we thought, and the feedback has been great. It was made in, the judge had a say on it, and then he worked with the people who were doing the class before. And so we are working on educating people too, and we've even heard young people say every kid should go to this. So we are hitting that educational piece too.
Are you working at all with high schools?
Yeah, we have a school resource officer out there, and he works around the area as much as possible. Yeah.
I must say that in my former life as a manager in an HVAC company, I had as many as 35 vehicles on the road, and I liked those radar vans as opposed to your disliking them, because driving safety was always an issue with that many drivers out there. And when I could have a picture of one of my technicians smiling at the camera, he couldn't deny he'd been caught. So it helped.
One interesting thing, and just as we've been talking to these red light people, they said that nationally, because they do this in a bunch of different places, something around 75% of the pictures that they see people running red lights, you can also see a phone in the picture.
Oh, my goodness.
75%.
Wow.
The only thing I have to say is black Dodge Charger. I don't like it black. Because I have a black Mustang, and people slow down below the speed limit on me.
That's a problem, Hal.
We just had a Maserati involved in a fatal accident the other night out in the Jennings Lodge area, I think it was.
Yeah.
And if any car on the face of the planet, you'd think it would not lose control, lost control. Of course, it was at night and what have you. Somebody.
And the driver had a little bit of help, according to the news tonight.
Yeah. Yeah, probably, yeah.
Well, I've seen kids with their back in the car at Taylor and 9th Street, sitting on the fire plug. I don't know how they got up there.
Okay.
I'll be here.
Thank you, Chief. Martin, it's your turn to tell us what
All
Public
right,
Works can do for speeding
where
issues.
Where to start?
Yeah.
A lot of stuff on my plate here today. So just to let everybody aware, Public Works, John, myself, and TAC, we're aware of the issue. We're aware of the concern. We're trying to do what we can within our budgetary constraints. We've made some pretty good improvements in the last few years. It's not that I've pushed it. It's just what I can recall from what I've been here. Trying to work with the community with some traffic calming efforts. So one of the things that we've put into this next biennium budget, which we're working on right now, come into effect July 1st, is a line item specifically for a traffic calming program, a citywide traffic calming program, where we'll start doing some public education and some outreach. Several of the communities have these signs that you're seeing in yards that say "Drive like your children live here," or you've got the Traffic Boy Johnny that people put out. So we're looking at various outreach efforts that other communities have implemented and trying to take a look at what we can utilize within Oregon City. So it's on our budget. It made it through John and I, which are the first initial round, and then from there it moves on to City Commission and the Budget Committee for approval. So that's where I'll start, is with that discussion point. Then moving through the list of items that were brought, so several comments regarding signs. So we'll let you guys know some of the things that we do in the city. We have what's called a RAMS program. And our RAMS program, basically, what we did is divided the city into 13 different quadrants. Every quadrant is 1 square mile. And we go into each of these quadrants every year. Right now, we get about 1.8 quadrants done a year. But we have to go in, and under federal guidelines, we have to check all of the signs. So the advisory signs as well as the regulatory signs. So a street sign versus a stop sign, we have to go and assess every one of them. And they have to be rotated and cleared out to meet new highway standards within a certain timeline. So we're on track to get all of our 13 quadrants completed by the timeline. And we've go through and basically we measure all of the signs. Are they meeting certain specifications? Are they meeting reflectivity standards? And if they're not, they get all replaced out. We spent $22,000 last year on signs. Okay? So that's a static line item that we have in our budget. So we've spent $14,000 of our 22 for this calendar year, and I've tried to carry those funds over for the next biennium so we can at least keep up with our RAMS program and keeping our sign stock up to date. So there are several other alternative signs that were presented today, and I agree, some of them are very useful. Cost prohibitive to a very large extent. The LED sign that you presented, we have one of those in Oregon City on Holcomb as you're coming down. We have it as a flashing curve ahead sign. One 25-mile-an-hour sign through our contract, state contract vendor, cost me $25 to $30 depending on how many we buy at a time. The same $25 LED reflective sign, $1,600. I have the quote here from the vendor if anybody's questioning where I'm getting that number from. So, yes, they're extremely eye-catching. We do have a line item for looking at progressive technologies. So last budget cycle, we bought 2 new radar signs to add to our existing stock of 11. So now we have 13 radar speed signs that we've got throughout the city. Many of you say, well, I only ever see 6 of them because the other 7 actually rotate around the city amongst different locations that we have with each of the neighborhoods. So what happens is each of the radar signs on the rotating cycle will spend 3 months at one location and then move to another location. Okay? So the LED speed signs, we can look at those, but again, I have $22,000 for the whole year, and you're almost using 10% of that for one sign that we have to try and get at least 1 square mile done, hopefully closer to 2. Park Low Road and Lynn Avenue. I hear the concerns, and just as a gentleman stated earlier, we have to work in tandem with the state for setting speed zones. We are the local traffic authority, but when it comes to setting speed standards, we have to get consent and approval with the state, and both parties have to agree we want it set at this or that speed. So I'll request a speed study for Partlow Road. Typically, when you have inconsistencies on a corridor for speeding, let me just finish this train of thought and I'll get right to it. We can work with them and they'll consider that as justification for speed analysis and at least trying to get one consistent speed through a corridor. Same thing with Lynn. I wasn't here when Jason Frazier requested the speed analysis for Lynn Avenue. I do know within the Lynn Avenue corridor plan, when that build out comes to fruition, there is a recommended consistency speed moving through there. Essentially, that entire corridor plan really progresses that area into a boulevard area that could sustain a more consistent speed limit going through there. You had a question?
Two comments.
Tom, could you come up?
Yeah.
Again, Tom O'Brien.
Mm-hmm.
Martin, my understanding from the citizens tonight that spoke, while Partlow is a bit of a problem in that there's drag racing and so forth, that's not really the problem they were addressing. They were addressing Central Point Road.
I'm sorry, you're right. You're absolutely correct. It's Central Point near Partlow is the change.
South of Partlow.
Yeah.
The other thing is, I really would encourage, because of the tight budgets, that we take a look at the recycling of signed blanks. Those aluminum blanks are very, very spendy. To reface them would be a fraction of the cost of replacing the entire sign and blank.
I agree. I actually got that written down here as one of my items to take back to the shop and talk to our guys in our sign shop. We do very minor sign work internally. 90% of it is done through the county or a private vendor. So I have to see if that's something that we can work out with them. So thank you for correcting me on Central Point. I had Partlow and Central Point, but I missed the first part of it. Radar trailers, radar signs. So I already mentioned what we have in terms of stock and where we rotate them through. We also, within the last 2-year cycle, we put in some pedestrian activated radar signs or pedestrian crossing signs. So that's a line item that I have some latitude with. And one of the things that we did, and it's actually scheduled for delivery in about 4 or 5 weeks, is we bought a radar trailer for Public Works to utilize. So realizing the demand on the police department's resources and trying to work as a tool that we have for our speed calming program, we've purchased one of those items to help us with our public education campaign. We're working with Chief Ban and the police department on the viability of the red light cameras. So, personally, I'm just like the chief. I don't know if I'm pro red light camera. I can tell you from paying a ticket, I'm anti red light camera to the tune of $175. But they do have very good statistical information on long-term accident reduction and traffic calming.
So were you on your phone?
No, it was my wife. I just wrote the check. So, yeah. But, yeah. It's not. The red light camera isn't speeding. It's disobeying the traffic control. So, but those are the things that we're doing. A couple of things that we've done in the past. We've gotten requests from communities to, can you do an analysis here? You have to realize, staffing wise, we can't go into every neighborhood and do a tailored analysis. Just logistically organizing TAC and all the members to walk through Kenema, it was very cumbersome. And even John, and when we presented the data, we said, this is not something that we can be offering on a weekly basis. Let's go through a neighborhood walk. It's when a community approaches us and there's enough demand, we can do a few of these. But to commit staff or the members of the TAC that we're just going to go and walk out every one of these communities, I think it's not a viable, feasible option. But We have done internal analysis for areas. So we did an analysis for the Kenema area. We did an analysis for Center Street. And we take a look at the information that we have at hand, the best information that we have at hand, and where the data indicates this change meets the warrants, we will go ahead and make the changes. It's when the data indicates that it does not meet the warrants, because you have to realize we take on as much liability by not putting a sign out as we do by putting a sign out. So when the warrants are met, and the warrants are dictated by the Federal Highway Administration, State Transportation Authority, and to a lesser extent the local municipality. When it meets those warrants, we'll take those measures and move forward with whatever improvements we can. So I know, Louisa, we did an analysis for Center Street. Okay, we just last Thursday we just got our new 2014 traffic data. So I went through the traffic data for Center Street, and this is just an update on just the speed analysis. It took me about 2 hours to do volume analysis, and I just haven't had time. But I'll pass this out for the TAC members, and Louisa, I'll share this with you, and you can share it with any of the other the residents on Center Street. Even with the 2014 data, the speed on Center Street is still accurately posted for the 25-mile-an-hour zone. And it doesn't meet the warrants for a stop sign anywhere within that corridor. So the conditions haven't changed drastically from the data I had in 2011 to 2013. So as much as, again, if I could do this, just if this was Martin's Kingdom and let's put stop signs here and lower the speed limit, we would do that. But I have to follow sound engineering judgment and and put measures in place when they meet the warrants. Okay? Go ahead. Oh, yeah, you should probably come up. And I know you had your hand up, so we'll let you make a comment just after we finish with Louisa.
Thank you, Martin.
You're welcome.
Thank you. You know, I'm not a traffic engineer. I don't understand.
I'm not one either, so don't feel bad.
But I find it unusual that in a residential area, on Center Street, there's a stop sign at 5th, and there's not another stop sign for 1.3 miles. So from 5th Street, and Center Street is wide. It has double yellow line. It's like a little highway.
Yep.
Right in the middle of a residential historic area.
It's classified as a minor arterial, so that's why you've got that width and why it can support the load that it does have.
So, but isn't it unusual for a residential street to have a stop sign in one place and then 1.3 miles later there's another stop sign, Hilltop at Kenema Road. And true, there's a hill and windy road up there, you know, where it turns into Telford. But I just find it really unusual. It doesn't seem residential to me.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like a quiet, calm, historic area.
Go ahead. Let you finish.
So, I mean, I don't know if there's some kind of rule, but, you know, I think it'd be wonderful if we thought outside of the box and
And I agree. I'd love to think outside of the box, but again, I have to be very careful with decisions that we make within the transportation system, because I have to make sure that we meet at least a few of those check boxes that we have to justify for making those changes. Now, one of the things that people keep bringing up to us is, can you just put a stop sign in? Stop signs are not a traffic calming device. They actually have the reverse effect. If you look at many engineering studies, a stop sign, many of the things people are trying to avoid actually get increased because of stop signs. They're an advisory tool to designate the right-of-way. They are not a traffic calming device. So when people say, oh, just put a stop sign here, you get all these unanticipated consequences from placing a stop sign in a certain location. That's why it has to meet all of those warrants. The load count, the turn patterns, that all have to be met for that particular location. When I did the analysis for your location last year, it didn't meet any of those warrants for that stop sign locations. I looked at two different locations, the two most likely locations, and it didn't meet for either of those locations. That doesn't mean that at some point in time I can't reevaluate it if conditions change for whatever reason. When Lynn Avenue, that boulevard project finally comes in and things start to change, we're going to have to take a look at that entire corridor and everything adjoining with it and figure out what needs to change to accommodate these advancements.
I wonder what will make people slow down then. So there's a speed limit sign after the school, after St. John's. And then I don't know when the next one is, but I mean, what's going to make people slow down if there's not a stop sign, a speed hump, a traffic circle, a curb bump out, some kind of a sign? We had a sign, drive like your kids live here, and
Lisa's
it
got one in her yard
disappeared.
too.
Yeah, it disappeared. Yeah. So, but I don't know. I'm puzzled.
All right. And I realize you're in a residential area,
Right.
but the road classification for what's going through there, it's the right classification, the right speed, and we do have minor arterials running through residential areas. So I wish I had a better answer for you.
Yeah, it's a conundrum because it's a minor arterial, but it's a residential area with this 25-mile-an-hour speed limit. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Mike.
So, this time.
I was just going to say something about the sign, the LED sign, 16.
Okay, if you'd like to speak, just speak to.
I'm good.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah, go ahead.
I didn't sign up because they kind of spoke for
If
me.
you could just state your name for the record when you sit down.
Maureen Johnston. I'm one of those poor people that lives on that intersection between 5th Street and Lynn Avenue. And mine was a car that was sideswiped. They're a little better since they painted a white line and put up that blinky thing that tells you how fast you're going, which is losing its oomph. They aren't slowing down for it anymore. But I guess my main concern is there's a lot of talk about the Lynn corridor, and I kind of get the impression it's being set up as one of the main roadways from all the development up on top of the hill to out of Oregon City, because there aren't that many ways from all the development up there to get down to the highways that go to work and go shopping and things. There's the highway, there's 7th Street, and there's 5th Street, or Lynn. And 5th Street gets lost because everyone talks about Lynn Avenue as an art, you're going to fix it up, you're going to widen it, put a sidewalk, make it match all those little rules so that you can use it as a main thoroughfare. But down at the bottom of Lynn, in a residential area, is 5th Street, connected to the end of Lynn Avenue. And we kind of feel like our neighborhood, like everyone else, is being destroyed because we're at the end of Lynn Avenue. But we are a residential area. And I see the traffic increasing tremendously year after year. I've lived in my house for 18 years, and it's just increased every single year, and it's gotten faster. My main complaint isn't really the speed. I don't like it. Cars get hit, animals get hit. I'm sure, sooner or later somebody will get hit running across the street because we don't walk across 5th Street anymore. You look both ways, hold your breath, and you run because the cars are going too fast. And it's losing that residential area. And I don't know how you address that because Lynn Avenue is one of the main ways down the hill. And Oregon City, the way it's built, only has so many. But you can't forget us down on 5th Street. And it's different. It's 5th Street. It's residential. And we don't want to get lost in the Lynn Avenue corridor. We want to keep our residents. And I don't know what you can do about that. But we'd really appreciate it if you tried. Or at least acknowledge that you're losing the residential areas. Central, 5th. Those are separate from the corridor, but they're connected to them. And so we're losing our residential area because of the corridor. And it just seems like more of an effort can be made to address that somehow. Good luck. Thank you.
I'll allow one more comment, this person from the back, and then we'll have to conclude this part of the meeting this evening.
I just want to, one little thing, and I caught myself here. I just verified against the plan and my report. I'd stated that Center is a minor arterial. It is not. It is a collector road under the Transportation Safety Plan. Yeah, it is a collector, and that is what I have in my report. So I misspoke, but I caught myself, so culpa mea is all I can say.
Is High Street also then?
High Street, from looking at the map, is where I got, and I'm looking at it at 50,000 foot elevation. High Street is the minor arterial. Center Street is the collector. And that is what's stated in my report. So, sorry about that. Sir.
Go ahead.
I would just like to point out that when the state and the city come to do their speed zone studying, that in an urban area, in a residential area, the city has a leeway of 10 miles per hour on either side of the calculated speed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that goes back to my statement. When we work it out with the state, it's kind of advise and consent.
And then I'm just kind of questioning here is that it states here that Myers Road, Leland Road, Lynn Avenue, 5th Street corridor, all the way from Highway 213 to High Street, sounds to me like a bypass going through the residential areas. Because Lynn Avenue really is residential. It has a park on that one side, so there aren't a lot of driveways. It has the church up a ways on one side, and then it has the school, but it's really a neighborhood. And it just seems like that whole affair, like I said, should have involved public comment and notification.
Well, the Lynn Avenue corridor plan had, I know, at least 3 different public charrettes workshops with the neighborhoods and the community. Mayor Neely can attest to that. You know, there's numerous efforts for public outreach, including 2 separate instances where I believe they came and spoke to TAC in regards to the court.
Prior to this being...
It wasn't very neighborhood friendly, sorry. I didn't feel like I really had any say. I felt like it was shown to me and told, well, this is what we're planning. We just wanted to know if you liked it or not, but we're not changing anything.
I got involved about it when a neighbor on Lynn Avenue, Roger Theus, came to the city commission, and he hadn't heard about it prior to this, and most of us hadn't really heard about it till we read it in the newspaper. And then after I became involved in it, I didn't really find a lot of help in obtaining information. I had to go to a lot of work to find out what was going on.
Okay.
And I kind of felt like we were being shunned a bit. Because obviously the residents are going to have a different outlook on thing than someone who's engaged in traffic movement. So it just seems to me like that was kind of a flaw in the process, really, because a lot of the McLaughlin neighborhood had several meetings that were kind of designated for that. Doug Neely was a commissioner at the time. He spoke in... He wasn't really speaking in glowing terms of the speed being up to 35. And I'm not really sure everyone understood how this worked. What I was told was that ODOT did it. And I have commission meeting notes where people told commissioners that it was a result of an ODOT speed study, not that they had requested it.
Yeah, I'm not sure how the current speed pattern or speed designation on Lynn came about. I wasn't present at the time.
Well,
it's something I'd
that.
have to look into.
I understand that. I'm not criticizing you for it. It just seemed like that whole process, though, was somewhat private more than public. And there were options. It didn't have to be set at 35. And I have read the federal highway report on the 85th percentile, and one thing they do emphasize,
Excuse me,
the
sir.
85th percentile,
we'll have to
is
finish it up here.
the upper speed. So if a municipality is using that as a basis to set their speed limits, then enforcement does become pretty mandatory, because that's the upper speed limit, and it's going through a residential area without sidewalks and bicycle paths, a lot of it. So it just seems like that whole process was kind of putting the cart before the horse, and also not maybe in the best interest of the McLaughlin neighborhood as being a historical district to route traffic from Highway 213 down through the McLaughlin area, when it should really be going down and picking up the freeway, because most of the people coming down there are really going to the Highway 99 or 205. They're
And
really
most of
not
them are
coming
coming
into
from
Oregon
their
City.
homes in the west, southern and western part of Oregon City and beyond. They're nowhere near 213.
That are going to their homes, right. But there's a lot of traffic. I mean, I don't really understand setting up from a corridor from Malala Avenue, because Meyer Road was really a small little road with strawberry fields on it some time ago. It wasn't a major route that people chose to come into Oregon City. And Leland Road was kind of really a back way. I mean, Leland Road goes into Beaver Creek.
Well, I'm sorry, we're going to have to close this up. We've been an hour and a half for the speed.
Okay.
And we
Well, I'll
got
present a written
other
form,
things.
and it'll
Yeah.
be easier to read it.
You can come back again.
All right, thank you. I appreciate your time, thank you.
I, for one, will be contacting neighborhood chairs to come to the neighborhood meetings to address the speeding issues, among other things, and I'll give them plenty of time so that they can be prepared to give me something. I'm kind of a person that I'll listen to objections, but I also strongly encourage solutions, because we here don't have all the answers. Martin doesn't have all the answers. We don't live in your areas, and we don't experience the problems that you perceive are in those neighborhoods. I live in the Park Place neighborhood, and that sign that has those strobe lights on it that Martin was talking about is a real cool sign. I didn't have no idea it was $1,600. Holy cow.
Here you go, Bob.
But it gets,
Here's the bill.
It gets your attention.
1,600.
Okay.
$1,600. Yeah, 1,600.
Little reflector things talking about.
It's 10% of my annual sign budget, so it's a large expenditure. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody, for coming here this evening and giving us all that information. It's invaluable, and we have determined at the beginning of the year, a meeting, that one of the TAC goals for this year will be citywide safety campaign. So we're on it already. We hope we can help. Okay, our next item, and we'll wait until the people decide to leave so we can give Scott Archer our full attention.
I know because I provided the funds.
Okay.
This is why Hartwell Road signs are pretty much 30 yard speed. And this is when I choose.
Okay. Thanks.
You want those ones first, or side by side? You want me to? Which
Okay, our
one do you want me to
next
pull up first?
presentation will be on the Glen Oak and Filbert Run Parks master plans, and Scott Archer, the Community Service Director, will give us information on that.
Good evening. Thank you for the invitation to be here. I know we had, I think, some confusion about when I was going to come, and I was maybe scheduled last month, and I had to defer it to this month because we weren't quite far enough along and ready to. I wanted to make this a productive conversation, so I think we're ready to do that tonight. So what my understanding is that I was invited to come and give you just kind of an overview on the two currently undeveloped future park sites that we've been working on process for the past several months to master plan these sites, and they're referred to, at least for now, unless we do some kind of a name change at some point when we actually build the parks, but commonly refer to them as the Filbert Run Park Site and the Glen Oak Road Park Site. And what I'll do is just give you kind of a snapshot where they're at, what we're looking at for the proposed master plans, and then let you ask any questions that you might have. So I'll try to limit my comments as much as possible. What I will do is focus my remarks mostly on just transportation-related things, instead of telling you all the details of the park interior, development and so forth. And if you want to know more, I can give you more. So first, I'm going to show you kind of an overview of where the parks are at, just to make sure you know. This is the Filbert Run Park site that you're looking at. Hopefully you've got your monitors switched over to the presentation. And the highlighted area there, it's a 3.5 acre neighborhood park. It is in the just off of Central Point Road, kind of in one of the areas that you spent a considerable amount of time talking about traffic just a little bit ago. It's in the Westling Farms Hazelwood Neighborhood Association. It's on Hazelnut Avenue, and just off of Central Point and just south of Skellinger Way. So we're on the southern portion of the city limits here.
Isn't it near one of the schools?
John McLaughlin Elementary is going to be kind of on the top left center of your map there. Yeah, I can actually use my pointer here to kind of that's John McLaughlin Elementary right there. And then if you could pull up the other overview, the other park site. I'm going to go back to some master plan drawings in a minute, but thank you. The Glen Oak Park site is the other one. This is a little over 9 acre community park, and it's in the Caulfield Neighborhood Association. It is near the high school, which is going to be off of your map. This is the backside, the sports fields of the high school. Glen Oak Road, High School Avenue, and then the future Myers extension will border the property, and I'll be talking about that a little bit more, so just to make sure you knew where we were at. So now if I could go back to just the master plan. There we go. Thanks. Yeah. I'm actually going to, bear with me while I jump ahead. I'm going to start with, my slides are kind of in reverse order of what I meant to do. But I'm going to talk about Filbert Run first, the smaller park, simply because there are very limited amount of what I think are traffic-related issues, and it should be a rather quick discussion. As I said, this is a 3.5 acre park, currently undeveloped, although it does get used for some kind of passive recreation right now in the neighborhood. A lot of new residential development, and then right across Hazelnut is a new housing development that's going in. The future development of this park, and let me back up just a little bit. I should have told you this is a little bit of the process here. Since the late part of last summer through this fall, we had a series of public open house type meetings in each of the two park neighborhood association areas, and a lot of public input, a lot of good feedback, and we based these master plans primarily on the public input that we receive. We view these as these are the community's parks, and so we're building them to. We are attempting to build them and design them and build them to the level that the neighbors want. So in this case, the development of the Filbert Run site is what I would consider fairly minimal in terms of developing the site, and that is as requested by the neighbors. A lot of participation in these processes. The site will remain and maintain a fairly simple feel and certainly a natural feel, and that was a big part of the emphasis. There will be new accessible trail network that will go through. let me actually get to the master plan itself. This is sort of the visioning document. Trail system that will be created, connectors into the neighborhoods here, one on the south side on Westwood, and of course off of the sidewalks on Hazelnut. And these will be accessible, ADA accessible pathways and trails that will provide recreation access and opportunities to people of all ages and all abilities, and that's a big part of what we do when we build a new park. As a minimally developed neighborhood park, and the definition of a neighborhood park is that you would expect the majority of the users to walk or maybe ride a bicycle. You could see a young child riding a scooter or bicycle to the park, but basically it's a walk-to neighborhood park. Those are served, developed to serve that type of a need. For those who might choose to drive to these types of parks, which will certainly happen, but again, the development being what it is, passive recreation, just open lawn areas, kind of a natural area through here. There's a lot of trees that we're trying to protect the tree canopy. We're adding some small amenities. We're adding some, there's a picnic shelter, a play area for children, and then you'll see these little markers here that denote either a bench or a picnic table of some type. So those types of things are really what we're developing here. We're not putting in any basketball courts or any big attraction that would draw people in from a long ways away. So what I guess to get to the point with the traffic issues is that we really believe that there is more than sufficient on-street parking either directly adjacent to or very near the park, right on Hazelnut or in areas fairly nearby. So, and I would expect that, at most you'd see maybe a handful of cars might park for some event if they came to a child's birthday party or a community gathering or something like that the neighborhood had. A few people might drive. So really minimal traffic impact. So we're not proposing any additional parking, no parking lot, no different street improvements are proposed. And I already talked about there are a couple of new, this is a new pathway access to the park. This is an existing entryway to the park, but it kind of goes into a very rough pathway. That will be greatly improved by developing the park site. And that's kind of it on Filbert Run. As I said, pretty straightforward. Any questions?
Just a quick question. Should it prove later on that you need more parking, have you got enough flexibility so you can, in the northwest corner or something like that, add parking? Not that you plan it, but just so if it becomes a problem, you could add parking to the site.
We really haven't discussed that. It hasn't entered the discussion. You'd see that that problem would be we've got a pathway situation here, so it would pretty well disrupt that. These are literally people's back fences right here, and I think it would be difficult for us to put a parking in that area, and then anywhere else. I mean, this would be disrupting This is not a very big park, even though perspective on a piece of paper is hard to tell. This is a fairly small lawn area that we'd really like to protect the passive recreation that we're trying to put in here. I would say the solution, if we had a problem, of course, we'd be working with the neighborhood and potentially the traffic advisory committee. We work closely with our Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee on any park development issues. We'd look at other solutions first. We have street access down here that we could maybe look at some additional on-street parking. We've got to be careful about what we do in terms of impacting the neighbors. But as I said, I think just with the abundance of on-street parking through this corridor right here, I really don't foresee that being an issue. So we haven't planned anything like that, and I wouldn't propose that we would want to put a parking lot in this size of a park.
I was at the open house you had there, and I got there late, and there was probably 40, 50 people there.
50, yeah.
And I didn't have to park even outside of that block there on Hazelnut. So
it's probably about as big of a crowd at once that we would have at that type of a
yes,
park.
I would think so. Yeah.
And you haven't had any parking problems at other neighborhood parks like this, have you?
Yeah, the Kenema, that probably is because it's pretty constrained, very small, narrow roadway, and it dead ends. And this doesn't have those type of constraints, so I feel like we'd be in a better situation. So pretty limited amount of those type of issues in what we call neighborhood parks, really, and very rarely put parking lots inside of a neighborhood park just because it takes up a lot of the usable space. So,
Any other room for covered picnic area?
Yeah, we've got that plan right there. Yeah, that's a picnic shelter.
Because I know families sometimes will have a birthday party or something like that, and kids will want to eat outside.
Absolutely.
Yep. Would that be facilitated by water? Would you have a sink in one of those?
Something that we would have to. We kind of talked about that at some of the master plan meetings, and I don't know that we completely decided, but most likely we'd have at least some kind of water fountain. I don't know that we'd have like a full sink or anything, but
or a coffee pot or something.
Yeah. So keep in mind some of the questions that you might have like that are details that are at more of a fine-tuned level than we're at right now. We're at the big picture master plan. When the time comes for us to have the funding to build these parks and also have the maintenance capability to take care of them, which is a big thing that we're talking about right now. When that time comes, then we enter into more of the construction level detailed drawings that we say, okay, drinking fountain here or not, and we kind of go back to, and we would revisit some of our discussions with the neighbors about what people felt was important in that.
So the city owns this piece of property?
Yes, sir.
It does? Okay.
We do.
So development of it would be out of the budget, or you go for a grant or something like that?
It would be typically the way that we build parks is that we charge a park system development charge, much like you do with your transportation fees and so forth. So we have a park SDC, and then we also typically will go after grants. We've been pretty successful as a city in getting grants to build parks in these competitive funds that are available. So we'll try to go out and kind of do match dollar for dollar with what we're putting up, and we've been pretty successful doing that. Yeah. And I should clarify, that kind of is a good segue for me to say something I wanted to make sure that I told you, is that we don't have a development timeline yet. The first step is getting these master plans done. We'll be taking them. You're part of this process. We've been through this with our Parks and Rec Committee. And the next step is going through the land use process with the Planning Committee, Planning Commission, and then eventually the City Commission to adopt the master plans. This is probably going to take us the next about 3 months or so until we have these adopted. And then we'll begin to discuss how to target development and when we can actually fund it and that kind of thing.
When you say comprehensive master plan, you're talking about site location in neighborhoods throughout the city, and then get down into the site development later on? Is that what you're saying?
I'm not sure if I misspoke or I'm not understanding the question, but we're developing master plans for these two park sites. So we are doing, basically, we're designing these two parks is what I indicate. And we actually do adopt a master plan for these two sites. That's what we end up with, is an adopted plan that says this is pretty close to what we're going to build, and these are the type of things that we're going to be doing when we build the park. Yeah. Any other questions on this one before I move to the other park? Okay. So I'm going to slide back up here. These are some. This is from some other presentations. We don't need to get into the grading within the park. I'm going to jump to the overview of the master plan. There's a lot more writing on this one, as you can see. So that's what I was talking about a little bit ago. Is that the development level between these two sites is quite different. This is a 9.1, 9.2 acre site. It is what we call a community park, which means that it serves both the local neighborhood, which we have a lot of new existing and some future residential development. So there's a lot of local neighborhood use that we anticipate, and then also this will have the type of amenities that would be more community wide, where people would drive to this site. Types of uses that would bring people here as a destination site. So for example, just again, I'm not going to give you the full rundown on everything, but and I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have more. This is information that I can also send you individually if you're really interested. But basically, what we're looking at here is off of Glen Oak High School, and then the future Myers Road that would be extended. We're looking at, I'm just going to kind of go north to south here real quick on this site, is a new parking lot. I think that's about 24 spaces. A lot of pathways, a lot of people moving through the park. This is a wetland. This is Caulfield Creek that comes through a portion of the park. We're planning to use this as a park feature. We're going to enhance the wetland. We're going to make it attractive to kind of interact with it, view it, and move around it safely, and maybe do some interpretation and learn some things about wetlands. We have on the very south side of the park, we have an existing house right here. I know this thing isn't very visible on there, but this is the house that exists right now. We're using it as an income generator that goes directly towards our park fund until such time that we decide what to do with it. So we rent the house out. But we've discussed the idea of using that as a variety of community uses, in some kind of a nature center or a classroom space or neighborhood meeting spaces. We've got different options there. So we're not sure if we're going to keep the house, but we're leaving it on the plan for now, and just kind of leaving that option. And then we have a small turn-in here with, I think, about 5 spaces that would serve the use of this house. And then also in this area, we would have one of our park host pads where you've seen around several of our parks, we have the park host. You'll see an RV park there. Maybe you think, why are we having camping in our parks? That's actually somebody that's a volunteer that helps us out. They get, in exchange for basically a free space and free utility hookups, they provide us some security at the park. They do some work like go around and do garbage patrol, and they do a little bit of minor landscaping for us. So we're planning to put one in at this site. Going over to this side here, you're looking at basically some what we would call hard courts, so basketball, potentially pickleball, and those type of uses. And then right here is a small skate park where you'd have some ramps and different things that the kids, even though we have a skate park at Clackamat, it is a long ways away from the hilltop, and we've heard a lot of feedback that people would love to see another skating facility up on top of the hill. So this kind of came to be as part of that process. Play area, pretty good sized. A lot of open lawn areas here, and just some kind of open turf areas, some nature areas, a lot of incorporation of a lot of trees. And then right here on this upper right corner is a proposed new dog park. So it'd be the first fenced-in real dog park in Oregon City, and we had a lot of an overwhelming amount of feedback to put a dog park in here. So that's there's more to it, but that's kind of it. You've got benches and picnic tables, and you've got some shelter areas and things like that. So again, getting to the transportation issues, I'll just run through those really quickly. Again, the park is this is just some privately owned property on this side. The south side is Glen Oak, High School Avenue, and Myers Extension. So you've got 3 of the 4 sides of the park bordered with streets, and that will be a pretty significant amount of the work that we do when we develop this park. In general, all 3 of the streets will have right-of-way dedication to provide on-street parking. So we're going to add a lot of on-street parking in this vicinity of this park. They will all have either added or new sidewalks and planter strips. We have multiple added crosswalks at intersections, and they're all showing stormwater treatment with flow-through planters. So you can see, I'll just highlight the crosswalk, 2 crosswalks, and I don't think we have anything up here yet because that would be a dead-end road for the time being, but I think at some point we would probably look at that when that goes through. Specifically on Glen Oak Road, we would have an added curb cut for the small driveway to the entrance of the house that I talked about. Added crosswalk, I just pointed out. 12 new on-street parking stalls would be added on Glen Oak. An existing bike lane will be protected, and then stormwater drains to culverts on that one. High School Avenue, I think as you probably know, this is very pretty well. It's totally undeveloped on the park side of the property, and it's in pretty rough condition. And if you've ever been through there on a school afternoon where they have soccer practice or whatever, people are jammed up on that road, kind of using it as parking. So I think not only when we build this park, it'll be doing a good public service for the fact that we're adding the park, we're also going to greatly improve the parking scenario by doing the street improvements there. So we'd be doing half-street pavement. We'd be doing striping for a 6-foot bike lane, actually on both sides. New sidewalk along our park frontage would be required, and it would be actually wider than a normal sidewalk. We'd be proposing to do it as probably at least an 8-foot, if not more, as kind of a multi-use type of a non-motorized trail. We're still determining some of those requirements and what we're going to do there. 25 new on-street parking stalls would be added there, and stormwater drains to culverts again. And then finally, we'd be taking where Myers ends or begins, I guess. Well, it sort of stops right here. We'd be doing this first portion of the, I think, much desired Myers Road extension. And then, of course, you know that the school district is looking at developing a transportation facility up there. So we're actually talking to the school district about how we can be efficient and do things that might save each of us some money and do some things that would help each other out. So on Myers, we're looking at, on our side of the street, we'd be required to do half-street improvements. And some of that would be dependent on what the school district does on their side and who goes first and all that kind of stuff. We would do a 6-foot bike lane and 15, in addition to the parking lot that I showed you on that side of the park, we would add 15 new on-street stalls. And then I think I already mentioned we're looking at, I believe, about 24 new parking stalls in the interior of the park. I guess one other thing I'd mention to you, maybe this is pertinent or not at this point, but our understanding is that we'd be required to provide a traffic engineer analysis, basically a letter from a traffic engineer, and not a full traffic study. That's what we're being told that we're required to do for the development at this point in time. So that's pretty quick, but I think those are the items that are impactful for what your purpose is of reviewing traffic issues. And I'd be happy to answer any other questions you might have.
Go ahead, John.
Looking at the two streets that are not in place yet, what did you call it, High School and
High School Avenue, yeah.
And Myers Road.
Right.
The schedule for the improvement of the park, would that occur before those others? And would you have coordination, since you called it a half-street development? Is that all timed? So it goes when the development goes? How's that working?
That's a great question, and it's not an easy answer. So High School Avenue is developed. Mm-hmm. The school district built their half of it on their side. This side on the park buffer right now is very rough. So we would do that part when we did our development. So as we go into our development, that would be a requirement. So whatever the timing of our development, that's when we would do that. Now, the Myers Road is a little more of a tricky answer because we are still working through some discussions that we're having with the school district right now. It is very likely that they would go forward with their development before we would, but there would probably be some benefit to us trying to at least consider developing the full road before we have to develop the park. And we're, without getting into those details, we're still working out some of that, and I'm hopeful that we'll be able to do the full road before we do the park, but it's not certain that that'll happen.
When you finance those road improvements, Are your resources limited to park SDCs, or do you have access to some other money since you are working on roads?
We're going to ask Martin for a lot of money.
I'm reading an email from David Evans and Associates as you're talking regarding Myers Road. We are entering into a contract with David Evans and Associates, a local transportation planning firm. We use them for a lot of our SDC related work. And we are doing a corridor analysis and coming up with a footprint for the Myers Road extension in conjunction with the school district, ourselves. I think there's one other partner that's kicking in some money, but I can't remember who it is
Community
right now.
college, perhaps?
Community college. So we're looking at that. In terms of timing, wherever possible, we try and see where we can get some synergy with capital improvement projects, and we'll work that out with parks when we have a better idea of what the footprint should be.
We're working on all potential angles to get that done, because really we would like to see that happen, because it's likely that the park is going to be further out in terms of being developed than the school site, but there's some benefits to getting it done sooner. So we'll be exploring all options. Yeah.
You certainly put the park in once you get the. When you put the park, you can put the park in and open it up without having the Myers Road leg fixed, the road system up there. I mean, you can put the park in and have adequate street access on two sides without Myers Road.
Without Myers Road completely punching
all
through?
the way through, you mean? Or
Yeah.
Oh, yes, certainly. Yeah, because we've got access from, existing Myers Road if you were coming off of Beaver Creek over this way, and then Glen Oak serving this way. So, yeah, this would be built, regardless, that would be built at the time the park was developed or prior to that. But then it would stop at the end of our development unless Martin and John come up with some miracle amount of money to do the whole thing. But again, yes, the park will be built with just the required frontage being built on that part right there, and then it would stop until such time that there were that the city and the other property owners had the abilities to move that forward. Does that answer your question? Is that what you were asking?
Let me try again. So could you open the park without the Myers Road?
Well, you mean without this part being done?
Yeah, without that part being...
No, because it would be a requirement. We have to follow all the city codes, even though we're a city department also. Just as any other property owner would be building, there are street improvement requirements. So we will have those requirements attached to our development, and we would have to build the project. So, yeah, okay. Gotcha.
Planning could put a condition of approval that they have to extend Myers Road for the full frontage extent that they are developing, and they could do that portion, possibly do both sides and work something out with the property owner, but they would probably have to wait until all parties came to the table with a long-term plan for the full extent of the punch-out. Opening the park without doing that extent of Myers Road extension, it'd be very difficult. It would be basically creating special rules for the city that we wouldn't apply on any other. We try not to do that.
Plus, we wouldn't...
you wouldn't have the parking.
We wouldn't have access to our parking lot, which is a big part.
Part of the reason I was asking the question.
Yeah, we wouldn't have access.
Your share then would be, if things didn't work out with other people, you would be required to put a half a street in.
Yeah, the typical requirement, the half plus 10 or whatever that may be, if the other property owner didn't already do that. Yeah.
Plus, you probably have to acquire a little bit of land from the school board to do it.
Yeah, we're working out because it splits right at our properties, and we've got some things that we're working out.
As I remember, you had one spot that was 8 feet.
It's beneficial for all parties to come to the table. It benefits the community college, the school district, and Oregon City to work cooperatively on this. So
especially, that's a great point, especially since we're all public agencies serving the same citizens, and
none of us are trying to make a buck.
Yeah, so we're working towards cooperative agreements on those types of things. Yeah.
I got one. I read in the paper that they're going to put a 400-unit apartment complex across from the high school. Is there money from there to go towards Myers Road?
I won't comment on the specifics of that development because I'm not the community development director, and,
Yeah.
and I would leave that to that
Because
person.
I'm looking at
but
traffic too from
Yeah.
that, so.
well, of course, there are those issues, but any new development, be it commercial or residential, we collect all the SDCs that are applicable. And in this case, I know there's street SDCs that are charged, and there are park SDCs that are charged. So those would go into those funds if that happened, if that development happened.
We have a citizen, Tom, would you like to come up and comment?
It's on the other side of Beaver Creek.
Traffic signals.
Yes, my compliments to Scott. He did an excellent job of explaining the overview of both of these master plans. Lisa, is it possible that you could pull up Google Maps? Earlier tonight, you heard some testimony during citizen comments regarding activity on Central Point Road. And it is an area that is of concern to the neighborhood association, of which I'm one of the co-chairs. It has been brought up during our planning process for the master plan that one of the major concerns of our citizens in the area is there's a significant amount of development going on the east side of Central Point Road. And Hazelnut, if we can zoom in here, go the other way. Okay. Hazelnut Drive intersects Central Point where all of that traffic is speeding along. This is the park area here. You'll see that it intersects at Central Point. We already have a large amount of newer residential here. This area, as we speak, is under heavy development, more than 100 residences going in, which says to us that from this point at the top of the hill, the top of the ridge on Central Point, up all the way up to Partlow is currently at 45, and as you heard testimony earlier, people are doing anywhere between 50 and 60 through that stretch. What does that do for us relative to this park? We're talking a block and a half away from Central Point. We're going to need to do something to control that speed. We are also going to need to have a safe crosswalk of some kind to enable children and the elderly to cross from this side where the heavy residential development is going on over to here. In terms of the activity on the part of the neighborhood, these people in this area, these people all the way up to Partlow, were the ones who were actively involved in going into that park, cleaning out a lot of debris. They filled over 17 large dumpsters with debris and down limbs and rocks and glass and drug paraphernalia, etc. These are the people who will be using the park in addition to the people that are over here in the area where Mayor Neely lives, or former Mayor Neely, excuse me. This whole area feeds in to that park here on Westwood. I'm in the wrong area. Feeds in here off of Westwood. This is dead end. There are no housing there. You can probably fit 6 cars in there as far as on-street parking. You can fit lots of on-street parking here, here. Parking is not an issue. The issue is the speed limit and a suitable crosswalk to allow for pedestrian traffic to get across Central Point Road. So those are the issues that we're faced with as we move forward on that Filbert Run Park. Thank you.
Does anybody else have any more questions? Okay, thank you, Scott.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Pretty neat information there.
Thank you, Scott. Appreciate you coming.
Okay, the next subject is TAC goals follow-up. And on the last page of your handout here, I just wanted to go over those again. We went over them briefly before. I wanted to know if there's anybody on the committee that has any special, very, very special interest in any one of those items, and if so, then we'd ask you to pay particular attention for the committee to those. Now, I know one I'm going to assign right now, and that would be the design standards for railroad undercrossing on 12th to 15th Street, and Henry has that one.
Thank you.
Because he brought it up.
You know, something about being, being made the chairman of the committee if you make a suggestion.
Quick question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
On the very first item, it says citywide safety campaign. We mean traffic safety, right?
Well, actually, there's a plan about town that will be addressing all safety concerns, but our particular job would be traffic, yes.
Yeah, so maybe we want to put that clarifier in there, put that word in.
Okay, yeah, let's add
Citywide traffic.
citywide traffic safety. Could you add that, Lisa? Well, if anybody has a special interest in the hospital master plan or TriMet service changes, TriMet is one of my favorite subjects. Not a happy subject for me.
For me.
Got it.
Okay, well, let me know if you have any special interests. We'll go from there.
So one thing I'll speak to here on sidewalk concerns, one of the budget items that John and I have worked into this budget cycle is what we call a sidewalk infill program, to take a look at deficiencies in sidewalk connectivity where there's no development that's projected to come in and potentially bring it in a few years, or there's no master plan that's calling for pedestrian improvements, and trying to take that work on as in-house contractual work. So that's one of the items that we've tried to line item for this upcoming budget cycle. Same thing that we did with the pedestrian improvement programs with the PED crossing walks is doing
well,
some
that'd
sidewalk
be great,
infill.
because I know I personally have received a lot of comments from people that complain about the lack of sidewalks, and you go 2 blocks with sidewalks and then 2 blocks without, and then 3 blocks with.
This is going to be the low-hanging fruit. It's not going to be areas where we've got a quiet right-of-way. It's not going to be areas where we've got, geo issues or
Well,
slope
who knows?
issues.
You might end up with
It's
finding a $30 million
flat
grant.
land that we own that there's just 100 feet of sidewalk that's missing, and we can work it out with the adjacent property owners and try and do a quick and easy infill.
And that's an area of interest for me.
Okay, Martin, do you have a Public Works report for us?
Yeah.
Chairman.
So,
Mr. Chairman?
Oh,
so
yes.
Do we want to officially adopt these then, like in a motion, so that we have it on the record? These,
The
priorities
goals?
or goals, yes.
I kind of put that off last meeting, or when we first addressed this, because I would like to wait until we get the goals from the city commission,
Okay.
and then kind of meld them all in together if possible. We'll fit them
That's
all
fine.
in. Is that okay with everybody?
Yeah.
Okay.
So at your desktops there, I passed out a couple maps and some spreadsheets for the upcoming pavement maintenance utility fee that we manage out of Public Works. One of the things that we just completed a few months ago was an update to our 5-year work plan for our PMUF dollars. And I wanted to share that with you guys just to give you an opportunity to take a look at this. One of the things that we do every 3 years, we do PCI analysis for the entire city, where we basically do pavement condition indexing analysis. We go out and come up with a subjective comparison of all of the road surfaces so we can take a look and have a basis for prioritizing work and determining what's the appropriate level of treatment. So we finished that analysis this year, and then in conjunction with that, we've gone through and re-racked and stacked what we want to focus our transportation maintenance dollars for the next 5-year cycle. So we've done a really good use of the tax dollars across the last 5 years, and one of the things that we'll be presenting to you either next month or the following month, depending on an agenda, is a 5-year look-back report. Under the PMUF ordinance, we're required to provide City Commission a 5-year look-back to say, what have you done with these tax dollars, with this special revenue source that we created to kind of show our investment in our transportation system. So this is the draft 5-year PMUF report that Lisa's scrolling through right now.
Figure 1.
Yeah. So I think it's page 60 on those. So the 5-year look back will show you what we've done, and then the new 5-year projection will show you what we intend to do. So the first page that you have for you is the rehabilitation project list, and you have an accompanying spreadsheet that's color coded, and each of those colors represent a fiscal year or a summer construction season on what we intend to do for each of these upcoming 5 years. The pink on the top, that's what we intend to do this summer. So we've begun the design process for all the roads outlined in that that grouping. We have one of our design firms helping us with coming up with some rehabilitation work that needs to be conducted and figuring out what improvements that are triggered because of you're coming in and doing rehab work. So now you got to do all this ADA improvements, all of these other ancillary things that need to happen, including service improvements for the utilities that are underground. Because what we hate to do is come in, rip up a road, and then come in a year later and say, oh, now we're going to replace the water lines, or we're going to replace sanitary sewer lines. So it's really staging all of those things. So you'll see a breakout there for each of the 5 years of what we intend to do for each year on rehab work. So it's a very important qualifier. Rehab is the labor-intensive, heavy cost work. It's when we mill 2 inches or more and then come back and pave over another 2 inches. That's the light end of rehab. The heavy end of rehab is totally reconstruct the road from base up. So you'll kind of get an outline of what we've got working on the rehab side for each of the 5 years. And you've got the accompanying map that shows you the geographic locations of those areas, so you can take a look at those at your leisure. The other map and corresponding spreadsheet that I gave you is the preventative maintenance work. So to have a good asphalt maintenance program, if you're spending all of your money rebuilding roads that you basically allowed to go to seed, you really aren't doing your job very well. So we have just as an aggressive with a preventative maintenance program as we do with a rehab program. Our goal with that is to do PM work to a point where we can at least stabilize that PCI rating, keep it within our level of service, so that we don't have to invest the heavy dollars for rehab and rehabilitation. The spreadsheet that you have with you, this is everything that's outlined for preventative maintenance work for just this summer. If I gave you the full 5-year projection, that's 20 pages on this same size document. So that gives you an idea of how much PM work we try and program in for each of the years. So for our planning scenario, what we utilize for all of PMUF work right now based on revenues is $1.5 million each year. That's a sliding scale based on how heavy we want to go on PM versus rehab, and then you have the engineering costs. So as a planning concept, we use $1.5 million. $250,000 goes to engineering portion, and then whatever is left is divvied up on rehab and PM based on what are the priorities for each of those years. So if you take a look at 2015 on the rehab side, we have $879,000 projected, about a $200,000 for contingency, so that's $1 million that we set aside for rehab work, $250,000 for the design side, and that leaves us about $250,000 for the preventative maintenance work. Then we have some ancillary dollars from carryover here or there that we'll utilize, but overall, this is a general outlook of what our pavement maintenance fee is used for. In about 2 months, we'll give you the full report to take a look at. You'll get the 5-year look back. You'll get the 5-year projection. And you'll also get an analysis telling the city what is the existing level of the pavement maintenance fee, and is it sufficient to sustain your existing level of service. We do not anticipate coming to City Commission, regardless of what the analysis says, to do a rate adjustment. We've had a lot of rate adjustments within the city recently. We feel that we have an aggressive program that is doing a good level of service. We do need to take a look, though, on that financial side and at least make sure that we're doing our due diligence and present all of the data and not just the subjective data of what we care to present.
When you say rate adjustment, what does that pertain to?
So every property in the city of Oregon City pays a pavement maintenance utility fee. It's based on your land use. So if you're residential, it's a flat fee. And if you're a commercial property, it's based on a very complicated analysis that we just finished auditing this summer, and it gives me headaches to think about. But it's based on your average daily trips and how many cars are actually coming to your place of business, whether it's employees or customers, and then that adjusts to a proportional scale for businesses as it would be for residences. This analysis that we do in conjunction with the 5-year projection takes a look at what's your load that you have in terms of work, so how much work really needs to get done, how much fee are you charging, and is the fee appropriate to support the level of effort that you're trying to put out. So, is it right now? I don't know. We haven't finished the analysis. I can tell you that we feel that we're doing a good level of work with the fee as we have it right now, and we don't anticipate requesting a fee increase from City Commission, but we do need to do the analysis. I need to be able to defend the level of work that we do, and when somebody says, oh, this PMUF fee, I'm paying this and I never see my dollar's worth, and we can point out every project that we've done with it since the inception of the fee, and then we can also point out that really it should be X and it's set at Y and able to support the level of service that we really want. Okay? So that's the PMUF report. The Mythbusters roundabout, we can say for a minute. It's coming up on 8 o'clock, so 8:20. So my watch is a little slow. We have a video that we keep talking about roundabouts. Everybody talks about how effective they are, and I'm not an engineer by training. I'm just an engineer because I stayed at a Holiday Inn, so they gave me the job. But this video does a really good job of bringing the concept of roundabouts versus four-way stops to a layman level, and I think it's a great tool for people to take a look at and get an idea of the improvements that are viable with a roundabout. I will leave it to the discretion of the committee. It's 10 minutes. If you care to watch it, we can put it up on the screen. If you care to watch it on your own time, we have the link, and Lisa can provide that to everyone.
How about we adjourn the meeting, and if we want to watch it, we stay.
You adjourn the meeting, I'm out the door. So
forget that idea.
Yeah.
I'd suggest that we put it off till put it as an agenda item next meeting.
Okay. Yeah, and the only other
with everybody.
Yeah.
For me.
Okay.
Yeah, the only other public works report item I have for you is the Singer Hill closures that we've had the last 2 weekends. So I'm sure a couple of you have seen that. We had a rock slide on Singer Hill about a week and a half ago.
Oh, another one.
Of course, it occurs on a Friday afternoon at 3:30. So worked most of that weekend, taking care of that issue. This last weekend, if you drive down Singer Hill, you'll notice we put in some rockfall barrier along the rockfall area. And then that's a short-term solution. We have a long-term solution that we're working on to stabilize that slope. So I worked on that most of this weekend, including the holiday. Hence why you adjourn the meeting, I'm out the door, because I have enough grief at home. I don't need to be home any later. All right? But I'd be happy to stay if we want to watch the video. It's actually pretty entertaining. But
I'll look forward to seeing it next
yeah,
time.
we'll send you the link and you can take a look at it. And then if
Cool.
you guys want to
Okay.
carry it as an
Yeah.
agenda item, it's one of these when people really start, oh, roundabout. I'm like, just watch the video and you kind of get an idea of what these traffic engineers are talking to you about when you're throwing out V over C and all of these other complicated terms, which everybody just hears Charlie Brown's school teacher in the corner going, wah, 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 wah. Okay? So that's all I got, gentlemen.
Okay, communications. Anybody have anything they want to speak about,
I
John?
have a communication. This is kind of a follow-up on all the public testimony.
Uh-huh.
So I'm wondering how staff is going to manage the follow-up. Some of them look like they had some background work on, and those will get on the agenda, but maybe they can take each one of the presenters. And I'm open to any idea you have here.
Right.
And just make a staff report to say, this one's resolved, these two will be scheduled, and these, however they're going to handle them, so
Okay.
they're just not floating out there in the ether.
So I've written down notes on every comment that came. Let me bring this up. I've written down notes on every comment that was presented. I can tell you for some of the comments, I do not have an answer, nor will we be able to generate an answer. Connecting 213 to the residential roads with a canyon in between you, I don't have an answer for you.
So, yeah, I'm not. You may say that you don't have an answer,
Yeah.
and that might just be one sentence on response to some, but so that each presenter, we know that there's some response.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I think we do have a responsibility to the citizens. And I, for one, have to go through the video on this thing in detail to figure out what parts of the city they were talking about.
Well, and that's part of it. So, I mean, you may
Some
run
of the
string
some of
out.
the issues that they've brought up, we hope to be able to try and address with our traffic safety initiative that we're hoping to put forward with this budget cycle.
So that would be what you would,
Yeah.
out of a sentence, say, this is when we, and how we plan to
And
address that.
for those, I'll try and come up with just a general statement as to what we intend to do. I can tell you, while we want to have at least we want to look at every one of these questions, I can't give you a solution for every one of them.
We understand that.
So the only thing I can do is investigate, and if there is a viable solution, then I will try and present something. But it's not something where I can generate a problem solution or even do a heavy analysis even a light analysis for every one of these.
Well, and I think if you decided you were going to do an analysis, that's what you'd say. On this presenter, we'll do an analysis, and it'll be 3 months from now, or whatever it is.
It's just, you guys have to realize, I have to manage the entire utility program, fleet, and all of the other maintenance aspects of the city. So I'll prepare a report based on comments this evening with ready solutions that we can do. For anything I don't have a ready solution, we'll simply put address through the transportation safety program or address through additional analysis at a later date.
Thank you.
I think it's very important to respond to those citizens because they're the ones that pay the bills. And they're the ones that have
Every
the-
problem that's brought up here doesn't have a solution, though. I just don't want you having the perception that, and I don't want the citizens having this perception. If you come here and ask something at TAC, you're getting a solution because
No, I don't
not
think any of them
what
expect
we
that.
need.
All they expect is to have some kind of action or
Well, action
paid
is a
attention
solution.
paid attention to, and a solution, if
They
possible.
can be heard.
Some of them, they can't be solved.
I think we should hear every problem. I think for those that we can address, we will try and address. But I don't want the perception being that this is where you come to get all your problems solved because
That's not my
I
perception.
can't do that.
No.
Not mine.
Martin?
Yep.
I do have a question. Does the city have a greater map around that shows roughly where these main roads that we've been talking about actually go when they leave the city? where Central Point Road goes, where Leland goes, where 213 goes?
Well, our GIS system is using regional maps from the from Metro.
Okay.
So those are our base maps. So once you pan out within our GIS system, the base maps will still carry out. We'll show you where those roads connect. What they won't give you is any of the metadata that's outside of the city limits.
Right. What I was thinking was it may be helpful for some of this discussion to be able to show that that people who live on Central Point Road to get to 213 to bypass McLaughlin might not even be a feasible alternative for them. And that we really need to see where a lot of this stuff is coming from.
Yeah. I'll take a look at it. I can't really, I'm visualizing it in my head, but
yeah, I can't remember ever actually seeing a map like that in the city.
Any other communications from anybody?
I got one.
Yes.
I don't want to put too fine a point on it, but I think what we heard tonight here goes way beyond this committee. I think it's a political issue. And I think sooner or later, this traffic situation is not going to go away. It's just going to get worse and worse and worse. And what I think is a comprehensive community approach to how we're going to respond as a community to these traffic problems, because I think it's just going to get more involved, and eventually it's going to come to a head where the commission is going to have to address it. And what I'd like to see eventually is a task force with the entire community involved in an open house type of a dialogue as to just what's possible and where we are and where we're going based on the resources that we have as a community. Because what I hear Martin saying is we just don't have the manpower and the financial resources to address this unless we come. Right now it's all fragmented. This guy understands this guy understands that. Up here they didn't get the word, yada yada yada. But eventually we're going to have to come together as a community and address traffic and safety, because it's just going to inevitably happen. So I just wanted to tell you where I'm coming from when I hear this type of thing, because it goes way beyond what we heard here tonight. Volumes of traffic are just going to escalate.
It's going to be back like it was in the 70s.
Yeah.
When we only had 8,000 to 10,000 people, and log trucks and chip trucks and concrete trucks were all going up this street. And I get behind a truck, you say, I'm not going to go that way. I'm going to go up Lynn Avenue.
Yeah. And people are coming here to this committee and say our neighborhoods are getting destroyed. And guess what? They are getting destroyed. They're no longer neighborhoods. They really aren't. And that's because, not because of growth, but because of traffic from somewhere else is going through our city. It's not coming to our city, it's going through it. And you're not going to stop that. So I would prefer to see this committee take a comprehensive approach to it, advise the commission that we'd better address this before it gets out of hand. And if we come up with a no solution, like Martin says, then we come up with a no solution. We might have to go to the state. Portland, with its street improvement situation, found out that politically it wasn't feasible because they couldn't come up with the money.
They copied our ordinance, by the way, in case anybody's curious.
So
verbatim.
They referred all of their concerns to the state, because the state has got more money than the city does. So those are my comments. I don't want to beat a dead horse to death, but eventually we're going to have to address it.
Does anybody have any future agenda items that they'd like to?
I don't know if this is something, when I read that, and I said just a little bit ago, that apartment complex they want to put across the street from the high school.
Mm-hmm.
We need to know about the traffic problems going to be from there, because they're saying they're going to put a bigger sewer line in. They're going to have to do it, so that it's quite a few units. I don't remember what it was, but it was huge.
I think there was a
180
traffic
units.
analysis with that, I think.
Yeah, they have to submit a traffic analysis within the land use process. I will tell you that is still in the land use process. You can bring it up as a discussion topic, but I think John's going to advise you, and this is not my bailiwick. This is not my wheelhouse, so I could be wrong, but I think while it's still in the land use process, you guys have to wait for it to at least finish through that before you take a look at it.
It's
'Cause right
not-
now, it's all conceptual.
Is that side of the highway Clackamas County, or is it Oregon City?
I believe it's Oregon City.
Yeah, it's got to be Oregon City.
It was there for a while, it used to be the.
Yeah, it's in our planning division
I just-
for approval. So
I'm looking at the overflow on the Glen Oaks, where we've had trouble already, so.
Well, this is what I'm referring to. It's just going to get worse and worse and worse. The tumbleweed just.
So bring it up to John, see what he has to say.
Well, I'd hate to see our transportation system end up like the sewer system and force moratoriums. We've got to address the situations now. All right, I call